I'm not a fan of like making up business expenses just for their tax deduction. Like I think that's a really slippery slope. Like
Mm,
then you're overspending because you're thinking, yay, like it's a deduction, and then you just get a bit spend happy and it's still your money. I think a lot of
yeah.
people, when you go into business, it becomes a bit like monopoly money.
Yeah.
And it's just like, oh, it's coming in, it's going out. But it's like your money. So
Mm,
if you thought about it in terms of how much you get to keep and how much you want to be paying yourself, it becomes like a little bit different to, are you spending $1 to save like 25 cents and get the tax deduction? Is
mm.
that a smart way to spend $1 to save 25 cents? Like it still needs to have a return on investment. I think people are just like, yeah, you put it through the business tax deduction, but did you get a return on that? Or was it
Mm.
just like a total waste of money because you wanted a tax deduction?
Yeah. And then,
Mm.
I guess then it does come to that end of quarter or end of year, and you're kind of looking at the bigger picture numbers and asking yourself, what am I even doing here? Like,
Yeah.
is this business viable? Is it profitable? Is it helping me get towards my goals? I think that's the real like trap of not compartmentalizing everything and not paying yourself and just running everything through the business and just thinking I'll sort it out
Yeah.
later. I think that can be a real trap for people. They get to that end of that period and they're just like, did I just work for free?
Yeah. And a lot of the time the answer is yes. Like your business might have paid for a bit of your lifestyle
Mm,
in those, like getting those sneaky deductions through. But yeah, I mean, I've seen so many businesses which from the outside you think are going amazingly well, and then the
mm,
profit is just not there. And you were talking before about reinvesting back into the business and not necessarily drawing a wage. I'm such a big fan of drawing a wage, like as soon as you can, even if it's $50 a week or something. Like,
yeah.
I think a lot of people get into the trap of, I'm building up an asset which is valuable, or like I'll pay myself when X happens. And it's sometimes X never comes around, and then you feel so disheartened. Normally, 3 years in is when you start to feel quite disheartened that you've invested so much time and energy and effort into the business and
Mm,
money, and you're not getting back what you've put in. It's like a bit of an energetic, in a woo-woo way. It's an energetic exchange. Like you've put so much energy into the business.
yeah.
3 years, if it's not coming back to you, you start to feel not great about it. And you can start to feel like a bit of bitterness towards your business. So if you can start even drawing like a super small wage, like it doesn't have to be much, just get into that habit and then build it into your costs. I think a lot of time, like you think, I'll buy this thing for $10 and I'll sell it for $20, and yay, I've made $10 on it. But you haven't added in, like you said, you haven't added in tax, you haven't added in your overheads. I think that's a
Mm,
real problem people get into, where they don't spread that overhead costs. And it's not easy to do. Um, Spreading the overhead costs into your into your products. Like you
mm,
actually need to assign that cost as a product cost, and it needs to cover it. It needs to be, you need to sell it for enough to cover it. Um, which is kind of like, I was in business myself and I noticed that no accountants were doing this. I was trying to work with an external party because you're emotionally invested in your business, you're super close to it. Sometimes you're a bit blind to what's going on.
mm,
I would have just loved someone to look over it from a profitability perspective. Like tax,
mm.
I was like, in a way, tax is what it is. It's laws, it's compliance. You make money, you pay tax. That's just like part of life.
Yeah.
But you get to decide how much money you make. That is the one thing that you can control in a way. So I was like, who can help me with just like looking over the profitability of the business? And there was just no one doing it.
Mm.
So I was an accountant. I worked for really big manufacturing companies like Peter's Ice Cream.
Oh, wow.
And then I was like, I'm going to start my own wellness business.
Just total
So
step change.
just
Yeah.
like huge. I was going through, I had endometriosis. I was going through like a big
Oh,
wellness
no.
journey myself. And I
Yeah.
was switching to like low tox, everything. And I was obsessed. And I started my business. I was selling low tox, like skincare, makeup, cleaning products. And we had float tanks and an infrared sauna. So I had both products and services. So it was such a good mix in terms of like I made a lot of margin on the services, especially because there was no staff, like it was sauna and float tank. So there's no staff cost there. And then selling other people's products, not the most amazing margin ever. So the volume had to be quite high.
Mm.
But yeah, it was so interesting going from like looking at the profitability of a huge business like Peter's and then going into a small business myself. I can't remember how I ended up on this tangent, but
No, well, it was interesting. I think like even just the journey, like, I think a lot of people start businesses because they like, oh, I'm an accountant or I'm a this, I've got the skill. And then they kind of get in and they forget about all of that kind of stuff. But how cool that you could actually transfer those skills into a completely different business. What was that transition like? Like how did you feel looking at Peters and then looking at yourself, and was that a bit of a, oh, this isn't what I expected it to be, or was it this is better? Like how did that feel for you?
in terms of like the actual work, I loved it. So I absolutely loved. I had a physical store. I loved doing the fit out. I loved sourcing all the products. Like it was so fun for me. And in
Mm,
those first couple of years, I think I was working like 7 days a week and I just loved every second.
yeah.
Just, I'm obsessed with business. I think it's just so exciting.
Yeah.
And then becoming a business owner and not, I've always worked in big corporates and it was so frustrating at times. Like especially being in the position of monitoring the profitability. And I'm like, there's an issue here. And it takes 6 months to resolve it because it needs to go through
Wow.
this management team and that person needs to sign off and the CFO gets involved and the CEO needs to, and there's like, it's so slow to, it's kind of like the Titanic, like turning around a huge boat is really hard.
Yes.
When you become a business owner, you're like a speedboat. Like you are so nimble, you can make super quick decisions, turn the thing around so fast,
Mm,
which is, I think, such a superpower of small business. Um, and I loved it. I loved like I see a problem, I can fix it tomorrow. Like,
yeah.
and that was very exciting to see how quickly you can move in a small business.